1950s. Hollywood was a wild ride, and Angie Dickinson was right in the middle of it. Beneath the glamour and flashing cameras, secrets, romances, and love affairs burned hotter than the California sun. Among those swept up in the chaos was the captivating Angie Dickinson. With her beauty and charm, she was adored by many, but it was one man who captured her heart. Now, at 93, Angie is opening up about the true love of her life. Background on Angie Dickinson: the looks, the charm, the body. Angie Dickinson had it all. It's no wonder she was wildly popular among the men of Hollywood. But despite the attention, her love life was marked more by heartache than happiness. That is, until she met the man who would later become the true love of her life. So, who exactly captured Angie Dickinson's heart? Keep watching to find out. Dickinson, the middle of three daughters, was born Angeline Brown, lovingly called Angie by friends and family on September 30th, 1931, in Culm, North Dakota. Her parents, Frederica and Leo Henry Brown, were both of German descent, with the family name originally spelt Braun. Raised Roman Catholic, Angie grew up surrounded by words and stories. Her father was a newspaper editor and publisher for the Culm Messenger and the Edgeley Mail. He also worked as the projectionist for the town's only movie theater until it burnt down, planting in Angie a lifelong love for film. In 1942, at just 10 years old, her family moved to Burbank, California. There, she attended Bellarmine-Jefferson High School, graduating at the age of 15. A bright student, she won the 6th annual Bill of Rights essay contest the year before. Angie went on to study at Immaculate Heart College in Los Angeles and later at Glendale Community College, where she earned a business degree in 1954. Inspired by her father's profession, she initially planned to become a writer, but soon changed her mind. Between 1950 and 1952, while still a student, Angie worked as a secretary at Lockheed Air Terminal, now Bob Hope Airport, and also in a parts factory. In 1952, she married football player Gene Dickinson and took on the name that would become iconic Angie Dickinson. Her journey into showbiz began almost by accident. After placing second in a local Miss America preliminary, a casting agent noticed her and offered her a chance to appear as one of 6 showgirls on The Jimmy Durante Show. That exposure caught the attention of a television producer, who encouraged her to pursue acting. Angie took the suggestion seriously and began studying the craft. Before long, NBC invited her to guest star on various variety shows, including the Colgate Comedy Hour. It wasn't long before she crossed paths with Frank Sinatra, a meeting that soon started a lifelong friendship and more. Early roles. On New Year's Eve in 1954, she made her official acting debut on an episode of Death Valley Days, and from there, her career began to soar. Angie appeared in episodes of Matinee Theater, Buffalo Bill, Jr., City Detective, Gunsmoke, The Virginian, and many more. Hollywood had a new rising star, one with beauty, brains, and undeniable screen presence. By 1956, Angie Dickinson was steadily making her mark in television. She appeared in an episode of The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp, followed by a guest role on Have Gun Will Travel the next year in an episode titled A Matter of Ethics. Her rise was gradual, but unmistakable. In 1958, she portrayed Laura Meadows in Colt .45, and that same year played Mrs. Fargo in Perry Mason's The Case of the One-Eyed Witness. With each role, Dickinson sharpened her craft and broadened her range, leaving a lasting impression in shows like Mike Hammer, Wagon Train, and Men into Space. In 1965, she landed a recurring role on NBC's Dr. Kildare as Carol Treadman, and just a year earlier, she captivated audiences in The Fugitive as a cunning conspirator opposite Robert Duvall. Her versatility was undeniable, from an unfaithful wife in State Trooper to a troubled guest in 2 Alfred Hitchcock Hour episodes, including the eerie Thanatos Palace Hotel. Dickinson's film career started humbly with uncredited roles in movies like Lucky Me, 1954, and Man with the Gun, 1955. But in 1956, she scored her first starring role in Gun the Man Down, holding her own beside James Arness. Her role in Chinagate, 1957, a Sam Fuller cult classic, introduced a more complex Angie, unafraid to explore the darker, grittier sides of storytelling. Refusing to lean into the platinum blonde bombshell stereotype popularized by stars like Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield, Dickinson opted for a more natural, honey blonde look. She carved her own lane, one that fused sensuality with intelligence. Her early screen presence graced B-movies and westerns, such as Shootout at Medicine Bend, 1957, and crime dramas like Cry Terror, 1958, where she starred opposite James Mason and Rod Steiger as a calculating femme fatale. Then came her breakthrough. In Rio Bravo, 1959, directed by Howard Hawks, Angie lit up the screen as Feathers, a bold, flirtatious gambler who wins the heart of the sheriff, played by none other than her childhood idol, John Wayne. Surrounded by stars like Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson, Dickinson held her own with effortless grace, and Hollywood couldn't look away. Still, fame had its complications. When Hawks sold her personal contract to a major studio without her knowledge, Dickinson was blindsided and disappointed. But that didn't stop her. She surged forward, landing prominent roles throughout the 60s. From The Bramble Bush with Richard Burton to the star-studded Ocean's 11, 1960, reuniting with friends Sinatra and Martin. She tackled a wide range of roles, from a conflicted nurse in The Sins of Rachel Cade, 1961, to a scheming lover in Rome Adventure, 1962, and the title character in Jessica, 1962, a midwife scorned by jealous wives. Yet, perhaps her most provocative role came in 1974's Big Bad Mama. Playing the fierce and sensual Wilma McClatchy, Dickinson stunned audiences with a daring performance, complete with nude scenes alongside William Shatner and Tom Skerritt. In her 40s, she was commanding a new kind of attention, attracting a younger generation of admirers and redefining what a Hollywood siren could be. Her iconic status was cemented in 1966 with a legendary Esquire magazine cover, where she posed in nothing but a sweater and pantyhose. The image became so renowned that, decades later, Esquire had Britney Spears recreate the look for its 70th anniversary issue, a tribute to Dickinson's timeless appeal. Her role in The Policewoman. At age 42, Dickinson returned to the small screen in March 1974 for an episode of the critically acclaimed hit anthology series Police Story. Her performance was electric. So electric, in fact, that NBC didn't just take notice, they handed her a show of her own. At first, Dickinson hesitated. A series meant long hours and creative confinement, but producers knew how to sell the pitch. You could become a household name, and that did it for her. Policewoman was born, and so was a TV icon. The series broke rules and records. Dickinson, as Sergeant Pepper Anderson, wasn't just the first woman to headline a successful hour-long television drama. She kicked the door wide open for every female-led cop show that followed. Set in the Los Angeles Police Department's Criminal Conspiracy Unit, the show followed Anderson, often working undercover. She was tough, smart, unpredictable, and, most importantly, impossible to ignore. Alongside Earl Holliman, Charles Deercop, and Ed Bernard, Dickinson didn't just play a cop. She was the cop every woman wanted to be and every man couldn't look away from. Within its first year, Policewoman hit #1 in multiple countries, smashing expectations. Dickinson earned a Golden Globe and 3 Emmy nominations. But years later, the glow dulled. In a 2019 interview, Dickinson confessed she regretted taking the role, not for what it represented, but for what it demanded. "It's constant. It's really hard," she told Fox News Digital. The role gave her fame, but it robbed her of time for films and personal pursuits. "I signed the contract, so it didn't matter if I found it inspiring or not," she admitted. "But the way it was presented to me was, Don't you want to be a role model? And for that reason alone, she stayed. In 1974, a woman in uniform was still a visual rarity. Dickinson didn't just wear the badge, she transformed it. Policewoman started a national phenomenon. Police departments across the U.S. saw a spike in applications from women. The ripple effect was undeniable. Without Pepper Anderson, there would likely be no Cagney and Lacey, no Charlie's Angels, and no Bionic Woman. Dickinson had lit the fuse, even if she never considered herself part of any feminist movement. "I never felt the need for feminism," she told AARP. "I never felt competition with men." Her philosophy was blunt and self-aware. "When I was up for a role, I didn't compete with men. It was a role for a woman." Dickinson accepted her place as a sex symbol with biting wit. "Are my legs exploited? Well, that's all I've got to sell," she quipped. Yet, the glamour came with creative limits. She bristled at the recurring bath scenes, those eye-candy moments where the phone always seemed to ring mid-soap. Essentially, a woman's job is being a woman, she once observed. A provocative statement, perhaps, but in a career built on contradiction, it fit. By the time Policewoman wrapped in 1978, after 91 episodes, Dickinson's legacy was etched in television history. That same year, she reprised her iconic role in the NBC special Ringo alongside Ringo Starr and John Ritter, peppering the pop world with her signature blend of satire and swagger. She continued to poke fun at her persona with parodies of Pepper Anderson on Bob Hope's Christmas specials, and again in 1987 on Saturday Night Live. That same year, the Los Angeles Police Department gave her an honorary doctorate in recognition of her cultural impact. Dickinson's response? Pure gold. "Now you can call me Dr. Pepper." Throughout the 70s, she appeared on the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts, famously taking the hot seat herself in 1977. Roasted by legends like James Stewart, Orson Welles, and her Policewoman co-star Earl Holliman, Dickinson proved she could take a joke just as well as she could take down a criminal. On screen, Angie, Dickinson didn't just play history. She made it, wrapped it in silk, and then kicked it through a pane of glass. The badge was fiction, and the influence very real. Angie Dickinson's marriages. Balancing stardom and family life isn't easy, and for Angie Dickinson, it came with some rather tough choices. At the height of her career, she drew a clear line to not work overtime. Why? So she could go home and cook dinner for her husband, Burt Bacharach. Angie's first brush with love and commitment came in 1952 when she married Gene Dickinson, the football star from Glendale College. They were college sweethearts, but the marriage didn't last. By 1959, they had divorced, and that same year, Angie landed her breakout role as the sultry gambler Feathers in Rio Bravo. The role didn't just boost her acting resume, it sealed her status as a rising sex symbol in Hollywood. After her split from Dickinson, Angie's love life drew attention, as she was romantically linked to some of the biggest names of the time, including legendary crooner Frank Sinatra, her co-star in Ocean's 11, John Wayne, and even President John F. Kennedy. But it was in 1965 that she said, "I do" again. This time to famed composer Burt Bacharach, the genius behind hits like What the World Needs Now is Love and I Say a Little Prayer. A year after the wedding, Angie and Bacharach welcomed their daughter, Nikki. But what should have been a joyful chapter quickly turned into a fragile one. Nikki was born 3 months early, weighing just 1 pound, 10 ounces. Doctors feared the worst. Angie later shared how she and Bacharach watched their newborn hour by hour, holding their breath and celebrating every tiny ounce gained. Nikki pulled through, but life was never simple after that. She was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and her early health issues left her with vision problems. Angie knew her daughter needed more than the typical attention, and she didn't hesitate to rearrange her career to give it. She turned down major roles that would have demanded long hours or travel, including the iconic part of Hot Lips Houlihan in M***S**H. Instead, she took on smaller TV roles that kept her close to home. Then came Policewoman in 1974, the role that would make her a household name. Angie became Sergeant Pepper Anderson, an undercover cop breaking boundaries and rewriting what women could be on television. But even with this major success, Angie stayed grounded. Before the show, she admitted she didn't want to outshine her husband. Ironically, that's exactly what ended up happening. As Angie's career soared, Bacharach hit a rough patch. At one point, singer Dionne Warwick, a longtime collaborator, even sued him over a contract issue. Meanwhile, Angie was carrying more than just the weight of her own stardom. She was also carrying the marriage. She once admitted she was crazy about Bacharach, and her actions proved it. On the Policewoman set, she refused to work weekends or take on long shoots. Her life was structured around Bert and Nikki. If it meant leaving the set early to cook dinner, that's what she did. Angie Dickinson may have played a tough cop on screen, but off-screen, she was a woman constantly juggling love, loyalty, and legacy. And in that delicate balance, she chose family even when it meant sacrificing the spotlight. Earl Holliman, Angie Dickinson's close friend and Policewoman co-star, once said it was hard on her. She wanted to be fully committed to her hit show and be there for her family. Trying to balance both pulled her in different directions. 2 years after Policewoman made Angie a star and a pioneer for women on TV, her marriage to Burt Bacharach changed. They didn't divorce, but they began living apart. Angie called it living separately and admitted that even her friends thought it was an unusual arrangement. Burt spent most of his time at their beach house in Del Mar, while Angie stayed in their family home in Beverly Hills. But he often came back, and neither of them was ready to make the divorce final. "We weren't divorced," Angie explained, "and I was sure one of us or both of us would eventually decide what to do." While figuring things out, they both started seeing other people. Burt went out with women, and Dickinson went out with men. But throughout, she still considered herself married to Burt. Perhaps she didn't want to break things off, because she still loved and adored him. Still, after 5 years of separation, the marriage ended in 1981. Angie partly blamed herself. The long hours on Policewoman had taken a toll. "I'd have left me too," she confessed. Burt went on to marry fellow songwriter Carol Bayer Sager, a woman Angie believed understood him in a way she couldn't. "He kept telling me I didn't," she said, with honesty but no bitterness. She was happy for him. Their daughter Nikki shared Bert's love for music. She played the drums. Angie once recalled how Nikki, who never wore makeup, told her, "We're never going to be equally feminine." She was different from her mother, and Angie respected that. Even after the divorce, she kept some of Bert's photos around the house. Though the two eventually stopped seeing each other, those memories stayed close. But the story took a heartbreaking turn. In April 2012, Nikki passed away at age 40. She had lived with Asperger's syndrome and vision problems all her life. In the end, she died by suicide in her apartment in Thousand Oaks, California. Burt released a short statement afterward, calling Nikki someone who loved kitties, earthquakes, and everything science-related. Nikki had studied geology at Cal Lutheran University, and despite her health struggles, she earned her degree with her father's help. Her eyesight kept her from working in the field, but her quiet determination never faded. After her passing, Burt canceled all his shows. Angie lost not just a daughter, but a piece of her heart. And though she rarely spoke about it publicly, the grief ran deep. But as life moved on, there was another love that would change everything for Angie Dickinson. A love that felt different from the type Angie had grown accustomed to. Who was the love of Angie Dickinson's life? He was the love of her life, but not the man she married. Angie Dickinson and Frank Sinatra shared a romance that lasted on and off for 20 years. And yet, despite this on and off romance that lasted 2 decades, they never walked down the aisle. Even for a love as intense as theirs, some things stood in the way. The two met in 1954 while both were married. Angie to her first husband, Gene Dickinson, and Sinatra to the beautiful Ava Gardner. But that didn't stop Sinatra from asking for Dickinson's number, which she gave him without hesitation. From that moment on, the attraction grew, and they started seeing each other almost immediately. In 1960, they starred together in Ocean's 11, where Angie played Sinatra's on-screen wife. That same year, she ended her marriage to Gene. Sinatra, however, remained tangled in a world of late-night parties, high-profile drama, and a schedule few could keep up with. And Angie knew it. By 1964, marriage was something they had openly discussed. Angie later shared that while the idea came up more than once, she had never been eager to pursue it. She said that they were so comfortable with each other, it didn't seem necessary. And truthfully, she didn't want to take on the kind of lifestyle being with Sinatra full-time would require. His late nights were part of what kept her from saying yes. He often stayed out until dawn, and though she was crazy about him, she couldn't picture herself married to someone who lived like that. Sinatra, for his part, had his own reservations. Angie recalled that he had once said he wouldn't marry a movie star, a comment she understood and even agreed with at the time. She remembered telling him she wouldn't wish that kind of relationship on anyone. Ironically, he went on to marry actress Mia Farrow just a few years later. In later interviews, Angie admitted she had never wanted him to propose, simply because she didn't want to be in the position of turning him down. Despite that, the two remained incredibly close. They stayed friends until Sinatra's death in 1998. There was no bitterness between them, only mutual respect and a history of affection. Angie often spoke fondly of him. She described him as the most important man in her life and said that just thinking about him made her smile. She admired his talent, both as a singer and an actor. She believed he had the ability to take on any challenge, even if he didn't always choose to. To her, he was difficult, wonderful, brave, and foolish. A complicated man who still held her heart. Though she later married Burt Bacharach and had a child with him, it was Sinatra who remained the great love of her life. Were Angie Dickinson and John Wayne ever together? Angie Dickinson may have been a trailblazer on TV, but off-screen, she was no stranger to scandal. Among the famous people she was rumored to have had an affair with was John Wayne. So, were the two ever together, or was it all just a rumor? Keep reading to find out. John Wayne acted alongside many talented and dynamic female leads, but according to the Duke himself, no co-star impressed him more than Angie Dickinson. Despite being 24 years her senior, Wayne clicked with Dickinson immediately. They first met when she portrayed his on-screen wife in I Married a Woman in 1958, where Wayne made a cameo playing himself. The pair would later share the screen in Melville Shabelson's 1966 war movie, Cast a Giant Shadow. However, neither of these films could compare to their collaboration in the legendary Rio Bravo. Howard Hawks's Rio Bravo has only grown in stature since its release in the late 1950s. This classic Western showed the kind of chemistry that no one could quite conjure up with John Wayne like Dickinson could. As Walter Brennan's character remarks in the closing moments, "Sheriff's got himself a girl." Normally, John Wayne's tough cowboy persona didn't lead to romantic endings in most of his films, but Dickinson's performance made it work. However, she was quick to credit Wayne for his own performance. There's no question that Rio Bravo features Dickinson's best appearance with Wayne, but it's important to understand the film's context. While Dickinson's gutsy and often scene-stealing performance as Feathers is a major highlight, it's only a part of what makes Rio Bravo one of the greatest westerns ever made. The film's brilliance is also attributed to the action, romance, and drama, all enhanced by Wayne's performance, alongside Dean Martin, Ricky Nelson, and, of course, Dickinson. Many people assume that Maureen O'Hara was Wayne's favorite co-star, as they worked together on 5 films. But according to Wayne himself, this wasn't the case. Michael Munn's book, John Wayne, The Man Behind the Myth, quotes Wayne saying, "We were damned lucky to have Angie Dickinson. She had beauty, sex appeal, and brains." Wayne also paid Dickinson the ultimate compliment when he added, "She was one of the best actresses I ever worked with." It's clear that Wayne not only enjoyed working with Dickinson, but her presence also elevated his performance when they were on screen together. Meanwhile, Dickinson was equally effusive in her praise for Wayne 13 years ago when she told Austin Culture Map that the actor was adorable when he worked with her. "I think it's a side of him we didn't see in a lot of his movies," she explained, referring to his character's romance with Feathers in Rio Bravo. Dickinson has a point, because few other actors, if any, were able to bring that side out of the Duke like she was. While Wayne had experience with romantic comedies prior to Rio Bravo, he's at his very best opposite Dickinson. While John Wayne and Angie Dickinson may have worked together on 3 movies, Rio Bravo is far and away the movie in which they share the most screen time. Rio Bravo sees the pair exercise incredible chemistry together as their characters develop a romantic interest in one another, which again was a rarity for the veteran actor typically known for playing gruff gunslingers. Comparatively speaking, their time together on I Married a Woman and Cast a Giant Shadow amounted to little more than cameos. Rio Bravo is also easily the highest-rated movie that Wayne and Dickinson have ever starred in together. While Rio Bravo stands as a benchmark film in the Western genre, I Married a Woman amounts to little more than a forgettable, if not outright bad, comedy. Cast a Giant Shadow is a somewhat ambitious biopic starring Kirk Douglas, in which Wayne and Dickinson have guest star roles, but it's also regarded as a thin, unimpressive movie that comes up short of its title and subject, the real life of Colonel David Mickey Marcus, who led the Israeli Defense Forces in 1948. Rio Bravo has aged extremely well, as contemporary critics appear to regard it even higher now than the general sentiment upon its release. The American Film Institute nominated it as a top 10 Western in 2008, and in 2014 it was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress en route to its selection for the National Film Registry, an honor reserved for only the most impactful movies in American cinema. Its influence has been seen in countless westerns since, and John Carpenter even cited it as the inspiration for his 1976 classic Assault on Precinct 13. Critics and moviegoers agree almost universally that Rio Bravo remains eminently rewatchable, thanks in large part to the ensemble cast. Wayne and Dickinson are certainly highlights, but the movie also features great performances from musicians Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson, along with well-known Western veterans Ward Bond and John Russell. Academy Award winner Walter Brennan also shines in his supporting role as Stumpy, and there really isn't a missed opportunity anywhere in the cast. On top of that, many film critics and historians agree that Rio Bravo marks the peak of legendary director Howard Hawks' work. The movie is well-paced and balanced, never leaning too heavily on either the romantic or violent sides of the narrative, and infusing enough dry humor to counteract the gunfights that anchor the drama. Hawks hits on many classic Western visual tropes that he himself is known for popularizing in Rio Bravo, but frames the sweeping vistas and intimate saloon moments better here than just about anywhere else in his career. While the two were never rumored to be romantically involved in a serious way, their chemistry was undeniable, and their connection only deepened as time went on. Whether or not they were ever a real couple remains a mystery, but their on-screen relationship in Rio Bravo speaks volumes about the bond they shared. It wasn't just the fans who noticed the chemistry. John Wayne himself couldn't stop praising her talent and presence. Do you think Angie Dickinson and Frank Sinatra would have ended up married if Dickinson wasn't actually an actor? Or do you think otherwise? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.